Hello, Janksters, and welcome to another edition of the MagicJank podcast, the weekly show where members of Team MagicJank get together and we talk about the latest happenings in Magic the Gathering. My name's Graham, I go by HamHocks42, and I'm joined by the one and only DamienF16. Damien, how we doing, man?
I'm good, thank you. Life is good. Haven't seen a single snowflake this season, so loving the weather, loving all the things that are happening. My final components for my PC are here, so we're gonna do a stream probably in a week, maybe a week and a half.
Ooh.
And I'm gonna build the PC on stream. That's gonna be interesting, a little daunting, but I have to change my whole setup. I have to move all this to probably the dining room and just use the dining room table and a big space. I need a proper table to do it on. So looking forward to that. But
Nice.
how about you? What's on the horizon? What are you getting up to?
Dude, that's awesome. I actually just recently upgraded my graphics card, which for me is like a huge, here you are building an entire computer, and I'm just like, I got a new piece, and it's nice. And I gotta say, it actually does make a really significant difference. So I've been having a really good time with that. So yeah, very cool, man.
Nice. Hardware upgrades.
Hardware upgrades, man, they make a huge difference. And so, yeah, I've been diving back into Baldur's Gate now that it's not super choppy. I've hit a couple of cinematic moments where I'm just used to it just kind of turning into a slideshow, and now there's motion. And it's like, ooh, this is neat. I can get used to this. Yeah, so it's pretty handy. Yeah, nice. I upgraded. I'm sure some listeners are curious. So I upgraded to the NVIDIA 4060, and I had a 1660, which was like top of the line 5 years ago. So yeah, it was a pretty significant
big jump.
Yeah, big jump, and it's great. I'm really enjoying it. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
So tune into the stream for more nice smooth visuals. It's gonna be great. Yeah. But yeah. So as far as Magic goes, right now we're still kind of like coming off the holidays, and there's not a ton of news. We don't have a ton of drama and whatnot going on, but Wizards is hitting the ground running in 2025 with a set that's actually going to be releasing here in just a couple of weeks as of this recording, which is Innistrad Remastered. And so I thought now would be a good opportunity, as good as any really, to dive into it and take a look at, see what they're doing and see what the set's all about. So folks might remember Dominaria Remastered as well as Ravnica Remastered, which are direct to paper. And then I guess there was also the Time Spiral Remastered as well, which is kind of the one that kind of kicked this whole thing off.
I think, that was the OG remastered set. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so these remastered sets are... they're an interesting setup, actually. I kind of like them just fundamentally. They're direct to paper, so they don't change legality in any way, and they're not appearing on Arena, which is a little bit of a bummer in and of itself. But we'll get into more of that as we go. But it's a draftable set, and every card within it takes place on a particular plane. And so I think it's kind of an interesting way of showcasing the planes that we've been to a number of times and injecting the market with some cool reprints that we haven't, seen in the past, or we haven't seen maybe in a while in some cases. And so, Dominaria was a great example of a plane that we've been to tons of times, and there were a ton of cards that were available, especially from like the game's original, the first few sets in the game's history. So Dominaria Remastered just had an opportunity to reprint a ton of that. Ravnica, another plane that we've been to a ton of times, and sometimes in sets that aren't necessarily named Ravnica, and so the ability to reprint like War of the Spark and things like that was cool. And Innistrad is one of those that we've been to a number of times as well. And here we are. We're going to be revisiting Innistrad in an interesting way and just getting so many reprints. Just all the reprints.
Yeah, I think the two main reasons that Wizards creates these sets, to my mind, is number one, like you said, the reprints. Putting just more copies of cards on the market, especially for Commander players, is a big deal. There's a lot of weird, they're not $100 cards, but they're like 40 or 35. Bring that down to 10, 15. That's the main reason. But the other big reason is I really love these sets for limited. And I know we talk a lot about Constructed on this podcast every once in a while. Headology pops in and says hi and talks about the latest limited environment. I play a lot of limited as well. I love limited. I go back and forth, but these sets give people a great way to experience those old blocks without going out and buying 3 different boxes of cards. Like if you want to play Innistrad block, I mean, there's 2 Innistrad blocks now. I mean, you'd have to go back and try and get some sort of assortment of packs that would allow you to play we're going to draft Innistrad. Well, is it going to be triple ISD, or is it going to be 1-1-1, like the way we used to draft in old Ravnica blocks and stuff, like one pack from each set? That's awkward. And since they did away with the block thing, the remastered sets are a great way to experience the format without having to go out of your way to buy a bunch of different packs and figure out how you're gonna, amalgamate them. They've already done that for you. It's curated. They've gone through the set. They've tested it for limited. So I'm trying to think. I didn't play Time Spiral Remastered Limited, but every other remastered set I've played a lot of the limited, and I love it. I don't think any of them were misses that I can think of. So should be good. Good track record. I anticipate this will be a really good draft set. So if you're into limited, bonus, and if you like EDH, or Camp Commander, I should say, there's going to be a lot of staple or a lot of cards that might be interesting in this kind of set. So you kind of win-win there, and
Oh yeah.
but not really a product for like competitive players or anything. Like you said, this is not going to change the meta game or anything suddenly. But there are some interesting reprints. So why don't we go over a couple of the more spicy ones? Or
Heck yeah.
you mentioned one. Do you want to lead with the
Sure.
green creature you mentioned? I
Yeah,
thought that was really interesting.
The one that really blew my mind. So there are a ton of reprints in this set, and we're going to get into a bunch of them. And there are, it's funny you mentioned that it's not really going to move the needle much for like a lot of competitive players. There's one that isn't the one you're referring to here, but like Gristlebrand, for example, is in this set.
Oh, yeah.
Like Gristlebrand is literally banned in Commander. Like you literally cannot play that card in Commander.
Yeah.
So like that reprint is pretty much just for cubes or Legacy. It's like really
Legacy.
or Modern, I suppose, is where So that one is like that include is an iconic character from this plane, and it makes sense to include it, but like that one's definitely not for Commander, like inarguably.
Right.
But
That's fair.
But one that I think is going to be absolutely fantastic for a lot of folks, and funnily enough, this one's actually banned in Legacy, is Hermit Druid is getting a reprint. And so if you're not familiar with Hermit Druid, you clearly don't love your graveyard quite as much as I do, which is understandable. That's a really high bar to clear, to be honest. A Hermit Druid is a 1/1 for 2, where you can pay a green and tap it, and then you reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a basic land. And then you put that card in your hand. So you never miss your land drops. Great. But that's not the part we care about. The part that really matters is that all of the revealed cards, before you get to that basic land, go into your graveyard. They don't go on the bottom. You just mill yourself like crazy, because normally, I have this in one of my Commander decks, and that deck has, I think, 6 basic lands in it. And so the chance of me milling like 15, 20 cards with this, including a ton of great Reanimator hits, and other maybe cards with flashback and whatnot, the chances are very high that you're going to get crazy value with this. So it's a
really
very
good
powerful
feature.
card. Yeah, it's just really good.
But you mentioned, well, like, when was the last time we saw this card? Like, this isn't just your average reprint here.
No, and in fact, I thought this was on the reserve list. Like, I was shocked that this is actually getting a reprint here. And I've seen some posts on social media. I'm not the only one who thinks that. So it was apparently included in the list at some point recently. But prior to that, that's a very low drop rate, kind of token bonus sheet include. So, I mean, the list is its own thing. I'm glad it was there. More copies are good. But prior to that, the last time it was reprinted, or last time it was printed actually, was in its original printing in Stronghold, which came out in 1998. I have a sneaking suspicion we have people listening to this show right now who weren't even born yet the last time that a meaningful printing of this card hit the market. So, holy cow. So the fact that Hermit Druid is going to be included is
I don't know how they got a young Jason Momoa to pose for the art for that. I didn't even notice that. That's wild. Before he became a big star, I guess, in '98. For those of you watching or listening who can't see, go look up that original Stronghold Hermit Druid art. That's uncanny.
Oh, that's absolutely
Anyway, but that's a sweet reprint. Yeah, like 19 years or however long, or no, what am I saying? 20-something years since that card got reprinted. That's awesome. Yeah, and it's a powerful card. Cheap activated ability, does a powerful thing. These cards, this is one of the examples. There's a whole set of cards in this new Innistrad Remastered set, which are kind of depicted like old comic books. Like, is that what they were going for here?
I think
crazy art.
Yeah, I think they're going for... Well, there's
Movie
the showcase printing. That is what I decided to put up for the video feed. Is I think it's like old horror movie posters. I think is what they're going for, like 1980s or 1960s horror movie posters. I think is the idea.
Okay.
But it almost looks like kind of an old cereal or something, something you'd see on a newsstand. Yeah, it has kind of that vibe to it, which is
they look
which is a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah, and the Hermit Druid.
Awesome.
Yeah, and the Hermit
Yeah.
Druid artwork shows, like what appears to be kind of the wise man in the forest that you would imagine from some kind of fantasy story.
Hmm.
And there's a gigantic zombified bear coming up behind him. It's like it tells you exactly what
Yeah.
you need to know about what this card is used for. Yeah, it's great.
Some of them look hilarious. Like the Edgar Markov one looks so reminiscent of the Mist. There's like the Mesmerist, or there was some old
Yes.
movie in like black and white. He was like, and this was the poster. It was like him, like, staring ominously toward the viewer and stuff. Some of them are great. I love these alternate arts. I don't know what the drop
Oh, yeah.
rates are for these. I don't know how rare these are, how often they are going to show up in packs, but yeah, I like that. Stick in some incentives for people to, we're going to draft this set anyway. Give us some added EV, give us some bonus stuff. I like when they do this in these kind of remastered sets.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they look very cool. So,
Yeah, I
any
could not
other
agree more.
spicy? What other interesting reprints do we have here,
Well,
though? We touched on Hermit Druid.
You did mention Edgar Markov, which we may have touched on this one at some point in the past, because this was an earlier preview that they gave for it. But Edgar Markov, we're not referring to any of the, it's not Edgar Charm Groom or any of the other variants. It's the OG Edgar Markov, the Mardu legendary that has Eminence, which is, honestly, for my money, the single best vampire commander you could possibly have, and I think that will ever exist. If you're playing vampires in Commander, it's just the best one, and I don't think it's ever going to get topped. It is a 6-mana 4/4. And then whenever it attacks, you put a ++ counter on each vampire you control. Now, the stats aren't great for what you get, and that's fine, but really what makes Edgar so good is, one, it gives you access to the 3 colors that are the most important for vampires, being red, black, and white.
Right.
So you get access to basically the color identity is all the relevant vampire colors. But you also have this Eminence ability. Whenever you cast another vampire spell, if Edgar Markov is in the command zone or on the battlefield, you create a 1/1 vampire token. So just by playing other vampires, even if you never cast Eddie out of your command zone, you're just getting 2 vampires for 1 like the whole time.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful effect. And of course, with all the different vampires out there that care about the number of vampires you have in play, you can imagine how quickly that can snowball. So it's a great card, to the point where like we don't see Eminence very often anymore, because of just how powerful it is. I wouldn't be surprised if some people might think they pushed the design on this one a little too much at the time, but it was an early Commander product, so they've learned a lot since then.
It looks like, yeah, that all those things sound bang on. I just noticed though, it's got a number in the bottom left, and none of the other ones do.
Yes.
Is that the only? So Edgar Markov is an X of 500. I guess they were printing only 500 of this Edgar Markov. Well, I don't see any other.
There will be a serialized version of Edgar Markov. So there will be a 500 serialized Edgar Markovs that go out. I believe he might be the only serialized card in the collector packs, but I do think this artwork will be on non-serialized versions as well.
Oh, okay. That's
I do believe the showcase will be available, beyond just the serialized numbers, I believe.
But
yeah,
none of these other ones have any serialized versions. It's only him. Is he the only one in the set?
That's the kind of thing that I sure should have figured out before going live. I think some of the other ones might, but I don't. Yeah, I don't believe so. Like, I know Hermit Druid doesn't have one. Although, to be fair, we were showing the showcase art for Hermit Druid. There is a regular art printing as well, that is getting new art. But so it's not only these the showcases. But yeah, I know Edgar is serialized. I think that may be the only one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking through the set trying to see if there's any others, but the other interesting thing here is it looks like they printed the entire set almost in, or many of the cards. No, not the entire set, but many of them in old border. So you've got Liliana of the Veil, old border, which looks very sweet. The like Snapcaster Mage here with an old border is kind of sweet. Crater Hoof, Deadeye Navigator, big EDH one you had mentioned before. We started recording there. Huntmaster of the Felds, old school with the gold like legend, old school frame. That looks cool.
Oh,
I love when they
to
do
see
this.
it.
And this was like Time Spiral Remastered was the first set they did that, and everybody was just, these are awesome. We all love old frames. I don't know, especially if you played, back in the day. So yeah, you've got a chance to get basic lands and a bunch of the spells. It doesn't look like every single one, but most of the big ones are old frame, which is pretty sweet. So a lot of styles.
There's something about that classic border, man. Yeah, especially with the multicolor spells and the artifacts. They just they pop. It speaks to my soul, man. Yeah.
the black cards with the bubbling, frame looks so sweet. I
Yes.
love that.
Oh my goodness.
But
So yeah, if you want an old school Gristle brand, that will be available.
yeah, it looks
Which,
awesome.
yeah, again, absolutely classic. There's something about that look. It's
Yeah,
yeah, it takes
yeah,
me
it's
back every
great.
time. Yeah.
So lots of value in there if you are interested in, any of the stuff we mentioned, but also if you like limited, I think it's a great chance to, you have your local draft group. This is the kind of perfect box to buy for your draft group and get that complete, Innistrad feel, that experience without,
Yeah.
buying 3 different sets of packs and everything.
Absolutely. Well, and there are a couple of really interesting includes that caught my mind, and a couple ones that didn't. There's one card that I was shocked wasn't included in this set, and I'm sure it was just I wouldn't be surprised if they tested it, but the limited environment just didn't work well with it, and that is Unburial Rites. For so Unburial Rites wasn't included, and I had a moment of just kind of like just disappointment because it's one of my favorite reanimation spells out there.
Pretty iconic. Yeah,
It
and it
is.
saw a lot of play. It saw play in standard. It's seen play in a bunch of stuff. It saw play
Mhm.
in factor fiction kind of decks and stuff at one point. Um, but yeah, that is an
But
interesting one to exclude. But
but at the
yeah,
same
maybe it was
time,
for balance.
it was probably just a competitive balance thing in
Mm,
limited because this set does have Faithless Looting, it does have Emrakul, it does have Gristle brands. Like some of the best reanimation targets of all time are in this set, and
yeah,
ways to get
might have
them into
been
the graveyard really quickly
might have
are
been too
there.
good.
So a four
Yeah.
mana reanimator might have been a bit much. So okay, fair. Like I'm not gonna scream about it. They do have I believe it was Edgar's Awakening from Crimson Vow is in there. So there is a reanimation
Okay.
spell. Which is, that's fine. I'm not mad at it. It's turn 5 instead of turn 4, but okay.
Oh,
It's
you
all
know
right.
what? I totally forgot. So how many sets have we had on Innistrad? 8? 8. We had 2 full blocks, and then we had Crimson Vow and Midnight Hunt, right? We're
Yep.
actually, yeah, I forgot about those
Yeah.
two.
And
Wow.
there's at least one rare in this set that actually didn't appear in any of those sets you just mentioned, but was given it was given a reprinting that was flavored to be Innistrad, and they counted it and included it. And that is Through the
Oh.
Breach. So Through
Oh,
the
yeah,
Breach was
right.
originally in I believe Champions of Kamigawa was in the OG Kamigawa block.
Yeah. It was
And
up
it's and
Splice. Yeah,
yeah,
Splice
it's
onto
spliced onto
Arcane.
Arcane, right? It's classic in that regard. But when they reprinted it for, I believe it was Ultimate Masters, they reprinted it with artwork showing Nahiri bringing Emrakul to Innistrad, which is obviously an iconic moment within the story, and it's this beautiful image, and the art's just killer. And so with Innistrad Remastered, they took that art, and which is clearly Innistrad flavored because it's showing a climactic moment on Innistrad, and they decided, well, let's bring that in here too. So even though
Right.
this particular flavoring that is Innistrad was only from a master set, it counts, and I'm not mad at it. I mean, it's friggin' an instant speed one shot sneak
Yeah,
attack. I'll take it, but
kind of
like
cool.
yeah. So it's
Yeah,
a
and
cool
this is
include, but it was
but it,
outside of the core
and they
Innistrad sets.
raised it up. They made it mythic here, so it's
Yep,
mythic. I believe it was rare before, but there's been a couple
I think you're right.
upshifts,
Yep.
downshifts in the set that we noticed. I think Huntmaster came from mythic down to rare. Huntmaster of
Hmm.
the Fells, Through the Breach went from rare to mythic. Through the Breach also has a very sweet movie poster
It
alt art.
does.
There's so I yeah, they only picked
Oh yeah.
about, I don't know, a dozen or 10 or 8 of these cards, I can't
Hmm.
remember how many, to do
Yeah.
with this art style, but Through the Breach is awesome. That looks like a straight up
Excellent.
old school horror, movie poster, just
Oh,
perfect.
absolutely. Yeah. No,
Yeah,
if
interesting.
I could see Mystery Science Theater 3000 doing a screening of Through
Yeah.
the Breach with, oh yeah, absolutely. Incredible.
Yeah, so set looks good. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It's too
Yeah,
bad,
I'm
I kind
definitely
of want it to come to
yeah.
Arena. I want to draft it, but I don't think I'm going to have a chance to even draft this set, to be
Yeah.
honest, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think when it comes down to it, I think the majority of these cards are already on Arena just by virtue of how long
Hmm,
Arena's been around, and so many of
right.
the so many of the anthologies and whatnot have pulled these cards in because a lot of them are relevant to various competitive formats. So
Yep.
I don't know what the lift would have been to get it onto Arena, but at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's not going to be draftable on Arena,
It's
which Yeah,
And
it was
there's
a bummer.
so much coming. Like we just got Pioneer Masters, which was
Mm-hmm.
arena only. I mean, that is still going on right now. I believe the Magic Arena or the Arena Open that just happened was Pioneer Masters. So they're
Mm-hmm.
full swing Pioneer Masters, yeah, in a month or when does this release, by the way?
This is going to be actually hitting store shelves on January 24th. So in
So
less than
like
2 weeks
just
as
over a
a,
week. Yeah.
yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, like that, and then we've got Aether Drift coming a
And then
few weeks
Aether,
later, and
yeah, Aether Drift
so
is
it
next
makes
month. So
sense.
yeah. Yep,
Makes sense they
absolutely.
skip it, right? But it's just too
Yeah,
bad because I would have liked to try it. I don't think I'm
for sure.
gonna get out to the shop to try it or anything, but we'll see. But anyway, is there anything else you want to touch on with Innistrad Remastered before we shift gears?
There are a ton of cards. Like as I'm scrolling through the list for this, there are so many cards where I go, oh yeah, it's that one, that's neat, or oh this is cool over here. And rather than spend 40 minutes of just, oh isn't this card neat, I guess we can just go check out the set, guys. It looks really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not gonna do a set review. Sorry, Ham.
Yeah,
I know
not
you
not
want
not a
to.
full set review. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff, and it's also really fun to see some of the synergies between the different sets. Like
Yeah.
for example, like Necro Duality from Midnight Hunt is in here next to Rooftop Storm from the original set. It's like because the
Yeah.
themes of Innistrad just cross all these different boundaries, and so as a result, they can make some interesting. I have
You
no doubt the
know,
draft environment's going to get weird, and it's just
as I
cool.
quickly like parse and I'm like glancing at most of this,
Hmm.
but you're picking out certain cards, and every time you pick one out, I'm like, yep, that's an interesting, and yep, that's an engine card. They put so many
Hmm.
engines and build arounds in this that the other thing I will mention, the last thing I'm going to say about
Yeah,
these
yeah,
kind of
please.
remastered sets, they are perfect for building your own cube. If you've never tried to build a cube and you're not sure where to start, I mean, yeah, you can go to Cube Cobra and there's all these places with people's lists and you can find those. Or you can literally just buy one or two, do a couple drafts with your friends, and if you guys pool the cards together, you could turn this into a cube
Hmm.
very easily. Any of these master sets, because again, they have all the different mechanics from all the Innistrad sets that have come before, and they also touch on. They have all these engine cards, these build arounds. They make sure to put a bunch of this stuff in there, which is kind of perfect for cube because it's redraftable. We can try drafting, many different decks in different ways, different colors in different ways and
Hmm.
stuff. So it is a great start for a cube. If you just want to get a cube together really quickly to just, reuse, like this is the kind of draft that's perfect for that. All of them are really. But
Oh my
that's the
goodness.
last thing I just wanted to mention.
100%. Yeah. I cannot echo that loudly enough. The other thing that I think is pretty cool, another point that I want to bring up with these remastered sets, and I'm also curious as to what's going to happen in the future, is we now have multiple planes being represented in individual sets. So one card that is
Mm.
being reprinted here is actually the Invasion of Innistrad, which is the
Oh,
battle from March of the Machine, which
right.
is an event that takes place on Innistrad, even though it wasn't from an Innistrad specific set.
Right.
And
Interesting. Yeah,
so
I like that.
yeah, I think it's cool too, right? It's lovely, and so I just can't help but
Well,
wonder. And we have sets like Aether Drift, which are actually taking place over multiple planes as they race
yeah, I was
through
just gonna
them.
say,
Yeah,
yeah,
and,
like
and
now the bleeding's happening between planes.
mhm,
Like OTJ, you were like, wait, who's in this set from what plane? How
exactly.
did they end up here? They got a cowboy hat now though, so I guess it all makes sense.
I
But
guess we're here.
I don't I
Yeah,
don't understand. So you're right. There's been so much bleed and like crossover between the planes at this point that why not? Yeah, put
why
any
not?
Innistrad card from any other set if it references if Grizzlebrand shows up in Aether Drift. Yeah, you put that version of Grizzlebrand in the Innistrad Remastered or whatever, right? It totally makes
Yeah,
sense. I like
100%.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm here for it too. I see no reason not to, because at the end of the day, these sets, the remastered sets are clearly designed to showcase the plane and the flavor of the plane, the
Yeah.
themes of the plane, and all the things that are happening on the plane. If a
Hmm.
card from another set that isn't necessarily tied to the plane is going to reference that plane, it's probably going to touch on those themes mechanically, in theory.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and now that things have crossed, I don't know. I think it's neat, because
I do too. Yeah,
yeah.
I like it.
Honestly, the whole I guess you know what? There's a question for you. This whole Omen Path
Shoot.
thing, the idea of the planes being connected now, is that something
Hmm.
that I know that you're a player first and a story connoisseur second, if at all. But like, is that
Yeah.
something that you? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? What are your feelings about
Well,
the sets not being tied to a single plane anymore?
I think it's I don't like it actually overall, but I think it's a good temporary thing. I would like to see them make the whole, multiverse interconnected via this web of omen paths or whatever,
Hmm.
and then at some point they break. And then everybody who's now on all these other worlds where they're not normally from are stuck there. That would be great. But if they just keep it like this, where everything bleeds into everything, I don't like that, because one of the coolest parts of Magic for me growing up, and for many people even many years later playing Magic, was each plane felt different. It had its own identity. And when you got to draft it, when you got to play with cards from that plane, you really felt like, yeah, these were, like, if I'm summoning a creature from Mirrodin block and I have another creature from Innistrad, it felt like these creatures were really from two completely different worlds. And my power is what put them here, on the same
Mm.
battlefield in front of me. Whereas when everything's just everywhere, it just feels like you're just, yeah, like, I don't know, there's no identity to any of the cards anymore.
Mm.
Like, there's no background. They're all just kind of random creatures in your, like, I don't know, they lose their flavor a little bit, I think, when every plane kind of, is connected intimately and people can just jump around back and forth, and there's, I don't know, maybe I'm a grumpy old man yelling at clouds, but I feel like it's the same, kind of arguments, or the same texture to the argument as the one against Universes Beyond. I
Sure.
like the lore. I like keeping it separate. I like the planes being separate. I like that, having them having their unique identities. So is this the end of the world? No, because again, we don't know what they're gonna do. I mean, this whole Aether Drift, Omen Path storyline could end in all the Omen Paths getting shattered somehow. Like the War of the Spark, same thing. This could go in a totally different direction than people are expecting, and maybe they don't end up connected after all. I would prefer that, but let me
Hmm.
throw it back at you. What do
Yeah.
you think about this? And am I a
I
fool or not?
No, not at all. You know that that's a perfectly valid opinion, and at the end of the day, I was curious what it was, and so yeah, no, that makes perfect sense, and I get it. I also hadn't really appreciated, you touched on something that I hadn't thought of that really resonates, and I think gets at the core of what a lot of people are feeling right now, and that's the notion of, well, I as the player was a planeswalker, and my abilities are what melded these different worlds together, and that made me feel,
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, maybe not consciously like special or anything like that, but it was a cool element that made me feel empowered in this game in a cool
Yeah.
way,
You're
and it
you're
just
an
kind of helped with the,
all-powerful
yeah,
planeswalker. Yeah.
yeah, it really
It's
kind of helps drive that fantasy home in a way that, that we're
mhm.
kind of losing, because, well, these creatures now might just bump into each other just cuz, and so now, well, why am I here?
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I think that actually does kind of challenge the fantasy that's at the core of the game in a way, which is, that's
Sure.
an interesting thought,
I
that I hadn't
mean,
thought of. Yeah.
let me open my mind and show you the library of spells that I've collected from all across the multiverse. We
Yeah.
call the deck a library still. Why do you think we call it that? Why do you think it was called that initially? It's a
Hmm.
collection. It's your menagerie of creatures, and your collection of spells, your repertoire, whatever you want to call it. And it was, you could equate it to books or scrolls, or you could envision it as a literal library, but it's just contained, in your psyche. And yeah, there were these, the books kind of touched on this, the early Magic novels. There was
Hmm.
these invisible kind of threads that would, the only a planeswalker could pull on and see, and you would just pull on that thread to that connecting across worlds to that creature that you tagged way back when you were on Zendikar, 10 years ago, and
Hmm.
just yank on that thread and pull that creature right down to you. That whole lore, that was the basis of Magic initially, and that was awesome. That feels so
Yeah.
cool. It was Monster Hunter, it was Pokemon. It was you collecting all these monsters and spells. Your repertoire of things is your library. You've got book. Yes, I pulled this one out. I pulled that one out. But when everything's like, I don't know, now there's no uniqueness, like, it's
Hmm.
cool, like you're on one world and you pull a monster from another world that doesn't belong here, and suddenly it shows up on the battlefield. Like,
Hmm.
that's way more impactful than just, oh yeah, these things I've seen them before, because they sometimes pop into this world and out, and or I don't know, or they're much, everybody's seen everything because everything's interconnected. Nothing's really,
Yeah.
isolated and weird and whoa, like nobody's ever been to this plane before. There's wild
Hmm.
and strange creatures. So I don't
Yeah.
know. That's the way I see it. Yeah.
No, I like that's really interesting, and I hadn't thought of that, so I like it. But when it comes to the whole interconnected nature, on a core level, I don't hate it, as
Hmm.
long as the creative team and the writers get it right. And so
Yeah.
far, it seems like they understand kind of what they're working with. But you know, one of the things in Aether Drift, you know, they kind of alluded to this idea that Chandra is trying to get the spark, or the, you know, the trophy to give to Nissa because she got desparked. And I find myself kind of wondering, well, what's the big deal? Like, why do sparks matter at this point?
Yeah,
You know, like,
right? Like,
why is that really? I understand this notion of like losing a part of yourself, and so wanting to feel complete again. Like, okay, I can understand that being a character, you know, kind of a personal feeling for Nissa, maybe. Like if that's the direction they want to go, I don't know, but like I can understand that to an extent. But at the end of the day, like, sure, being able to instantly, you know, being able to fast travel somewhere rather than have to, you know, drive for 2 days through omen paths to get to where you want to go. Yeah, okay. But at the end of the day, like,
yeah, you can do
you can
it
still,
now.
I mean, it almost feels like the spark that used to make planeswalkers these all-powerful beings that were unprecedented and able to manipulate the fabric of time and space. Now it feels like they're just the guys who bought the premium you know, the first class tickets, or have a private jet. Like, it doesn't necessarily, like, they can just move around a little easier than everybody else, but they're not going somewhere that is off limits to anybody now.
Right,
Which
definitely. That's it. It makes
yeah,
them, it devalues
it devalues them a bit.
yeah.
Yeah. Although, to be
But it's
fair,
interesting.
yeah, I also wonder if planeswalkers kind of got devalued when they saturated the market with them. You know, like the amount, the sheer number of planeswalkers made each one a bit less special. And that's been that's been a gripe that people have been levying for, at this point, decades. So that is what it is.
And that's why, you know, that's why you see them take a design turn and say, hey, we're not going to print more than one planeswalker in every set. I think they realized that.
I love that.
So yeah.
Oh,
so we'll see.
Yeah, if these creative decisions are really, even, like, I think that the writers have done a lot of thinking, and they're doing some cool stuff with it. So I'm very interested to see where they go with it, and I trust that they're going to handle it correctly and still make some interesting stories and create some cool worlds as we go. But I'm also, even if all of this is just an excuse to not have as many planeswalkers on the battlefield in Standard, I am cool with that. Like, that is all fine as far as I'm concerned. So.
Yep, I agree.
But interesting. Yeah, cool stuff.
So
yes. So remastered. Oh, when it comes to remastered sets, the next question that is on everybody's mind: what planes would you like to see be remastered that we haven't seen yet?
Well,
any thoughts on that?
You know, I mean, remastered. So when we talk remastered, we're talking, again, only reprints. We're not talking adding. Like, it would be cool for them to go back and do Homelands or Fallen Empires or some horrible set again and just make the cards better. But you can't go back to those old sets and try and, like, remaster them in the way they're doing now. Like, you just can't. So like I was gonna say, like, some old block, a block that, you know, has a bunch of commons and uncommons and things that we haven't seen for a long time. But again, there's this weird demarcation line. I don't know, maybe you go back, I want to say, like 15 years, and any sets within the last 15 years you can do that with. But past that mark, past that 15-year line, the sets are just too weak. I don't think you can make a remastered Onslaught or a remastered Kamigawa or something, because now the bar is too high. Like, do you remember when they put Innistrad, or sorry, not Innistrad, Khans of Tarkir, OG Khans of Tarkir?
Yes.
They put it onto Arena, the limited format, just OG triple Khans, great for one of my favorite formats of all time. And a lot of people who have not played Magic for that many years, who've never played a set from 15 years ago or however old it is, they couldn't believe how weak it was. Like, oh my god, you're playing vanilla 2/1s for 2, and you're playing 3-mana 2/2s. And yes, and that was bread and butter limited, like, for over a decade. But, you know, if they went back and did that kind of thing now, and Khans of Tarkir isn't even that old. Like, you go back to Onslaught, Invasion, you know, these kind of blocks, you can't remaster it without redesigning it. You have to just make all new cards, because otherwise, like, these cards, nobody's going to want any of this, you know, and the limited environment's going to suck, because it's going to be so underpowered. It's you know, and so I don't know. So which one would I like to see? I think the answer is something in the not too distant past, sadly, because I would love to see something like Antiquities remastered or Legends remastered.
Oh my goodness.
OG Legends, you know, would be crazy. Put Mana Drain in it. Put the big ones, Recall, whatever. I don't know what's worth. But so I don't know. That's a good question. the one like a block recently that they haven't. I guess it would be Cons. I think Cons Remastered is inevitable. I actually predict that we're gonna see Cons Remastered in the next year. Like, because the new set coming out, Dragonstorm is Cons, and then they're gonna put a remastered set out at the end of this year, beginning of next year, that is Cons Remastered, and it's gonna have OG Cons block plus Dragonstorm, and they're gonna balance it all and make like a unified limited format for Cons. That's what I'd like to see, and then they can reprint Fetch Lands, and that would be super solid too.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Okay, so yeah, Tarkir Remastered. Yeah, so
yeah. That's my answer.
I like that. I am bummed about how on the nose you are when it comes to power level of past stuff, because like classic Kamigawa, in my opinion, is just peak gaming. But like, there's a reason you don't see Soul Shifts. Like there's a reason that's not a thing. I
love it. So much value.
Oh my goodness! Like to this day, 20 years ago, I decided that someday I was going to make a deck featuring Life Spinner and make it work. I still haven't, but the day's gonna come and it's gonna be great. Yeah, so someday there's just something about that. But you're absolutely right. The actual cards just do not hold up, and so you could do a limited environment, but it's going to be a low power, slower environment that a lot of newer players maybe won't like, just because it hasn't aged super well. And yeah, so I guess instead of a remaster, you'd have to do like a reimagined, like classic Kamigawa reimagined, and like just that completely. Would be cool. That would be neat though. I'd love to see what they do with that. Like it's maybe not even as a make it non-canon, or make it like fully take place back then. But I don't know.
What do you call that? Is it you release it alongside the remasters? Is it just instead of a remastered set, we get like a reimagined set? Which would be really cool, but if you're talking all new designs, I mean, that takes now all the effort that they would normally put into a full set. Like, that's huge. I don't know if that'll be worth it, right? So,
anyway, I have a feeling we're years away from then, slotting in something like that into their already, like, seemingly quite crowded design pipeline. So,
you know what? If it wasn't for that's the kind of IP they could have done instead of relying on other IPs from for Universes Beyond. Like they could have done those kind of things. I think would be really, really sweet, because there's so much fascinating lore and nostalgia and everything in those old sets. But the cards are just from a different time, like design wise. So they all need to be kind of redesigned. But the stage is set, like you've got the background, the backdrop for everything. You've got familiar characters, they could bring back Kamal, bring back Braids or whatever from Invasion Block or whatever. And, instead, it's probably easier to just use other IP, and it probably makes them more money. So I get it.
Well, and that's one of the things that I thought was absolutely fantastic, specifically when it comes to Kamigawa with Neon Dynasty, the way they did the sagas. All of the sagas were references to some of the older characters and the stories that took place in the first. So Fable of the Mirror Breaker was referencing Kiki Jiki, the Mirror Breaker. We have Machiko's Reign of Truth, which is a reference to Machiko Kanda, the Truth Seeker. These kind of classic.
They were cool throwbacks.
They did a great job of you doing completely brand new designs, new cards, and the flavor of sagas being the stories from the past was like A+, no notes. They hit it out of the park. More stuff like that. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And even some was Hidetsugu an actual creature in Kamigawa? I believe he was, right? And then they just made like a new version of Hidetsugu, or was
Heartless Hidetsugu was the original.
Was the OG. Yeah, that's right. So he was an actual character who straight up lived 14,000 years later or whatever it was, and was a presence on new Kamigawa, right? So you could even do that when it makes sense. It's a demon. He's not gonna die of old age. So I like it. I think go back to Homelands. Let's see another Baron Sengir, and I don't know, Autumn Willow probably hit the dust. So.
Dude, I'm here for it. I want to see that. Yeah. So
anyway,
I'm all for it.
My answer is Cons, but you have not given me an answer yet. What is yours?
Correct. Mine, I think I'd have to say Mirrodin, because the moment you go back to Mirrodin, you have the original Mirrodin block, which was famously cracked in half at the time. So even though it came out in the early 2000s, the power level in that set was unprecedented at the time and absolutely blew things out of the water. Cards like the Artifact Lands, Disciple of the Vault, that whole setup, Affinity, it absolutely banana pancakes insane. And as a result, those designs, even as we've power crept since, they still kind of hold up, in my opinion. You know, your Mirror Enforcers
Yeah.
and your Frogmites, your Thought Casts, those are still
Affinity's
good.
still, yeah, Affinity's still a
You know,
powerful mechanic. I mean, that
are,
is absolutely true. That's a good answer,
yeah.
actually. And you've got Scars block, you've got the OG block, so that's 6
Yep.
sets to draw from. Plus, was there another? Like, they never came back and touched
Well, I
Mirrodin
mean,
at
all
any other point, though, right?
the Phyrexia all will be one, and you know,
Oh,
all that
yeah, you
stuff.
could count
That
those.
new
Yeah,
Phyrexia
right.
is Mirrodin, so you could do
Mm-hmm.
like all of that stuff. So there's a
Right.
ton. I feel like we've been to that plane plenty, and there's all kinds of different you know,
You might be
opportunities
right.
there.
That might be the next one they do because that's exactly the number of sets that Innistrad was. 8.
Mm-hmm.
2 blocks plus a 2-set block, quote unquote. You know,
Right.
two set kind of like little mini block. So that would be, yeah, that would be perfect too. Yeah, Mirrodin. And I think
And
you're right. I think a lot of
yeah,
those OG Mirrodin cards probably hold up just
I
because
mean,
artifacts matter is still a good powerful mechanic. It doesn't matter if they're new artifacts or old artifacts, they still have the word artifact on the type line, so
yeah,
they work with each other, you know.
they're
Yeah,
so
Aether
good.
Vial you're showing
Aether
on the
Vial,
screen is
Skull Clamp
ridiculous.
comes to mind.
Skull
Like these,
Clamp, yeah.
like
I mean,
the,
those are powerful. Skull Clamp is on another level compared to
it's insane
yeah,
for sure.
the other
But
stuff.
yeah,
But the artifact lands are really what's
mm-hmm.
super busted in Mirrodin. I mean, the artifact lands, they're straight up still banned in almost, you know, most formats. They're insane in Pauper, where they're legal, one of the few places. So that would be interesting if they printed them again. I think it would be a very cool, or at least it could be a very cool limited format. Yeah, for sure. I'd
Could
like to
be.
see them do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
I want to see, yeah, like old school Affinity versus Infect. What happens there? I don't know. Like, I think that'd be fun to see.
Oh yeah.
So
That'd
yeah,
be weird. Yeah.
I feel like there's enough to draw from there. The designers have a big enough card pool to work with. So I think
agree.
that would be a good one. Yeah, I do like Tarkir
Mhm.
though. That's a good shout because yeah, there's a lot of good stuff there too. Plus a whole new set that's coming that we haven't even seen yet. So yeah,
Right.
good stuff. Yeah,
Cool.
honestly too, they could also just when you talk about like antiquities and legends, some of those older sets. I mean, they could do 2 more Dominaria remasters and be just fine,
Yeah.
you know, because like so much of the game takes place on Dominaria. They could easily revisit that and
Yeah.
create a brand new experience that doesn't look at all like the previous Dominaria remastered. That's just Dominaria
Yeah,
remastered
they
2.
could.
They easily could.
I think
Yeah.
yeah, like it would be interesting. I miss like, you know, if you use a program like Xmage or a program to simulate Magic, you can go back and play sealed with other people and you can play any set you want. And my buddy and I think I might have told this story on the podcast at some point, but we used to play this thing called Wacky Sealed, where we would just load up, like we would randomly roll a dice, and whichever set it landed on, we would play sealed and
Oh
just
wow.
open like so Legends. Arabian Nights has like 8 card packs, so you have to open like 11 packs for sealed or something, like 10 packs. And
Oh my
so and
goodness.
there's only 88 cards in the set, so you get like 6 stone throwing devils in your pool. Like like you get like 5 or 6 copies of a bunch of the cards because the
Sure.
set is so small. Which essentially what I'm saying here is it's totally unplayable. We like Legends Sealed is atrocious. There's so many unplayable. There's all this walls matter stuff, glyphs and everything, and it's really too bad because there's so many cool cards that we like that are fun to play with in limited, but they're just surrounded by so much garbage that it's just
Well,
it's
and
miserable to play. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because you know, as a constructed player, I oftentimes find myself looking at sets, and you see the same kinds of commons and uncommons get reprinted over and over again. You know, and it's like, do we really need another 6-drop that gains me 4 life when it enters the battlefield? Like, well, in the
Yeah.
limited environment, yeah, we actually kind of do. Like,
Yeah, it's funny.
You know,
They've kind of identified these certain types of cards that must exist at common and
mhm,
uncommon in almost every limited environment, and that's why you see these same iterations. They're very slightly different, but
yeah,
very similar iterations in almost every set because green needs this 6-drop to stabilize with if it, you know, these green or
right.
whatever it is. Blue needs a counter spell of some kind. We've seen so many versions of a 3-mana counter, but just blue always needs something like that. That's part of its
Mhm.
identity. That's how it handles, you know, early creatures. It's kind of its pseudo removal or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, you're right. But anyway, so those old
Yeah.
sets are really sweet.
Yeah.
I wish they would go back and just kind of update the commons and uncommons because those are the cards that, like, I think the biggest jump in power level of cards in Magic sets over 30 years is not at the rare level. Even before they had Mythic
No.
as a card, rares and mythics from 20 years ago are still many of them are as powerful or more powerful than rares coming out now. Like not always, but the jump to old rares to new rares is a much smaller jump than the old commons to new commons. Like the difference between the commons and uncommons is vast in terms of
Mm-hmm.
power, whereas with the rares and mythics, it's much smaller. So that's really the weaknesses of those old sets. There's banger rares, there's bomb rares for limited and all that kind of stuff that in those old sets. But it's just the sea of garbage you have to wade through
Yep.
to even play these one or two. It's just
Mm-hmm.
terrible. So if they just got the commons and uncommons up a little bit in terms of power or synergy or however they want to bump them up. But that you're talking a whole set redesign because of course the vast majority of cards in every set are common and uncommon, so it's a large undertaking. I wish they do it, but I don't expect to
Yeah.
see the end of master sets anytime soon. I think we're just going to keep seeing more and more remastered
Mm-hmm.
sets. So who knows? Maybe they'll eventually go back to something really old.
Yeah,
But
I
you
would
never
love
know.
to see, a format like Legends or The Dark or some of these older sets that have these
Yeah,
incredibly
dark.
classic. You get a little bit problematic when you get that old, just because a lot of those cards are on the reserve list, like a lot of those very powerful rares, and so that becomes its whole thing.
Yeah,
I would love to see
yeah.
the reserve list get abolished, and I suspect it would. That's what it would
Most
take
of
before we
us
really. Yeah, I think a lot of players
are on the
nowadays are in
same
that same.
page.
Yeah, I think we're
Yeah.
preaching to the choir on that one for sure. Um, but at the end of the day, a draft environment that features primarily rares from Legends, and maybe find some of the bread and butter commons and uncommons from like Odyssey or Macadian Masks, or like
Mhm.
later on when they kind of got that design a little more fleshed in, and just pull them back in there to help
Sure,
support and
maybe.
make a playable
Yeah,
environment. Maybe some
could
kind
be.
of vintage remastered set where that really
Hmm.
showcases some of those old school rares could be. I mean, that
That'd
sounds
be
like the kind
cool.
of draft experience that I
Yeah.
would love. Like, make it functional but showcase some of those crazy bombs from back in the day. Oh, I'd love
Yeah,
that. That'd be
and
so
then
much fun.
reprint a bunch of that old stuff that, they
Hmm.
haven't reprinted in a long time. But yeah,
Yeah,
we'll see.
I think that'd be great.
But
But yeah,
not gonna hold my
yeah, I,
breath.
I
But
really, I really want to just, you know what? I want to force a draw in sealed with a divine intervention. I want to make that happen.
that's
I don't.
that's the card I used in one of our wacky seals. That was the last time we played Legends.
I love
That
it.
was my whole deck was built around this, and I did it twice to my buddy,
I love it.
and
Divine
just ended the
intervention.
game in a
Oh,
draw. Yes, that was
divine
the card.
intervention
I
is the
can't believe you
silliest.
picked that.
Silliest enchantment out
Yes.
there. If for anybody who's not familiar, it's 6 white white. It's an enchantment where you put 2 counters on this card. Remove a counter during your upkeep. When you remove the last counter from it, the game is over and considered a draw. You know how nowadays there are these, you have like happily ever
It's
after and these other
hilarious.
cards that like you win the game if you meet certain circumstances. This is just a draw. Like, you don't even win. Like, it's so
What?
silly. I
Okay, so
love
let
it.
me. This is saying game. So what happens in a best of three if I have a card? Let's say they reprinted this and it was in standard
Hmm.
somehow and it was a valid card.
Hypothetically, sure.
You side it. You win game one. If you win game one, you side in divine intervention, and then you draw game. Wait, no, you would have to. I guess yeah. If you draw game two, how would that work? You would just still have to play
Would you
game
still play
three.
game 3? Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, assuming you have
I don't
time.
know.
But yeah.
I'm wondering, like, is there some way for this thing to be like an actual sideboard card that comes in to like, yeah, end the match? Because if you win game one and then you draw game two, I mean, assuming there's probably not even enough time for
I
another
mean,
game 2 and 3, right? At that point, so if you draw game 2, yeah,
right.
it's over,
It's
right?
it's so funny though, because in a world where I feel like this is the predecessor to something like Approach of the Second Sun. Like that feels like a similar
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
setup where it's like,
kind of.
if you have
Yeah.
access to a ton of mana, you can just end the game with this.
But
Granted,
winning
Approach
versus
winning is a lot
drawing.
better than just drawing. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
things
get a
have
similar
changed.
vibe from it. And yeah, an Approach
Yeah.
is just genuinely so much stronger. Whereas, this is just, it's a
Is
silly
this
card, but
is this
it's a classic.
legal in Commander?
I believe
It
it is,
is, isn't it?
but it's on the
Have
reserve
you
list.
ever seen? Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
Because I was
Oh, I
gonna say
assure you,
that's a
if
wild thing to do in Commander. Draw the game in like a multiplayer game is
Mhm.
crazy.
Yeah, in a multiplayer game, you can
That's
do that. You
hilarious.
can't just say no, we all win or we all lose,
Group
depending on your
hug.
attitude, and we're gonna
Yeah,
be
group
done.
hug deck win
Yeah,
condition.
group hug
Beautiful.
win, divine intervention. I do understand. As far as I know, there are people who are willing to do that, and honestly, I would be amongst them. If the card wasn't so expensive, because like a single copy is almost $200 at this point, because it's
Oh,
just
wow.
just for collectability, because it's super duper rare, and
Yeah, yeah. course.
But I
Never
did
been
hear that there
reprinted.
were some, I don't know, rumor has it there were some control decks that did take advantage of this. It is legal in Legacy and Vintage, so, and in Oathbreaker, funnily enough, just looking at the Scryfall ban spread. Yeah. But anyway, it's yeah, it's a hilarious one, so I'm here for it. Yeah. I treat that the same way that I treat, you know what, I do like viewer battles on my channel often, and I have a rule where if your game actions cause the server to crash, we count that as a win. You know,
Really?
if you scoot swarm and cause the whole thing to crash, I'm gonna say you won that game. And so, or if you doppelgang with 5 doubling seasons on the board, which I can't think of any time when that might have happened. It gets silly.
Nice.
But anyway, yeah, but it's kind of like that. Yeah, if you draw it, I'll give you the win. I'm cool with it. But yeah, so good stuff.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully they get to some of those old sets at some point.
Yeah, that'd be neat. I'd like to see that a lot.
What else do we have on the agenda? What would you like?
I mean, Innistrad Remastered was kind of the big one. We do have Aether Drift coming in a couple of weeks, so we'll definitely want to talk about that as the time goes. Yeah,
but spoilers haven't started officially yet, right? I mean, we got a couple random ones, right?
They've given us a couple.
Showed Ugin. They showed a silhouette.
Well, that's for Dragonstorm. We know Ugin's going to be in Dragonstorm.
Oh, that's Dragonstorm. My bad. Right.
Yeah, no, all good.
2 sets ahead again. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, because every time they go to a convention, they have to give you a little taste, a little teaser for what's coming. And they've given us 3 cards from Aether Drift at this point. Yeah, there's Earth Rumbler, which is kind of a generic vehicle. There's new Duretti, which is interesting. And then the one that I think that has me definitely intrigued is Bright Glass Gear Hulk. So is the other one.
Oh, wow.
Which is 4/4 for 4 first strike trample. When it enters, you may search your library for 2 artifacts, creatures, and/or enchantment cards with mana value 1 or less. Reveal them, put them in your hand, then shuffle. So that has some interesting kind of build around implications, and it's curious, but yeah,
heavy color commitment, but yeah, maybe a cycle of these would be cool. Yeah,
right. Yeah, and so that's Aether Drift is going to be coming in the not too distant future, which I'm very much looking forward to. Also, when it comes to during the spoiler season, we're going to be touching on, the cards as they're spoiled. We'll definitely be covering them here. That's going to be, it's a key element of what we do here on the podcast. But one thing that I'm going to need to be very careful about while we're doing Aether Drift is not engaging in any speculation, which is something that you guys are going to be able to do without me. And the reason for that is because I actually was selected to be an MTG ambassador for Aether Drift, which is really exciting.
Okay. So what does that mean? Tell us. Yeah.
And so basically what that means is Wizards of the Coast is willing to hook me up with some kind of with information and a little bit of product ahead of kind of the normal release schedule. And so as a result, I'm going to be able to prepare content on the back end and have it launch immediately once all of the cards have been released. It's very exciting.
We can't talk about it on the channel. You can't leak anything.
We can talk about all the stuff that has been publicly released. I'm going to be talking about Aether Drift a lot. I mean, that's ultimately they brought me on board to talk about it, but
right.
There is some stuff that I'm gonna have to keep to myself, and so if I ever plead the fifth on any questions, that's what's going on, because I have definitely signed NDAs and I want to be in Wizards' good graces. So
good.
But yeah, good. So I'm excited. That's a cool opportunity, and I'm really jazzed. Thank you, Wizards. You rock. I appreciate you. So yeah.
That's 2 ambassadors we have on the team. You and Favretto, right? Are both ambassadors?
Yeah. Yep.
But
he got picked up with Foundations, and yeah.
Right. So how does it? That's what I thought. I'm like, are you I thought once you're an ambassador, you're just an ambassador. Period. Or you're not just an ambassador for one set, are you?
In the past, they've done it where ambassadors are ambassadors, and if you're an ambassador for this moment, and the original plan when they first rolled out the program, from what I understand, I wasn't part of it at the time, so yeah. So if any of these minor details are off, I apologize. But my understanding of it was meant to be kind of an annual thing where, ambassadors were selected and they just worked with you until they stopped, or until you decided to leave the program or whatever. And for each set, you just got stuff, and it was what it was. Now they've actually done some they've revamped the program a bit, and it is set specific. So ambassadors are brought on for a specific set, and when the next set rolls around, those same ambassadors might get brought on, or they might not. And so there is kind of this one, on the one hand, there's a feeling of like, well, if I'm good enough for this set, why would I not be good enough for that set? And it's not a matter about being good enough or not, is really the bottom line. They want to find voices that match the sets that they're releasing, and on top of that, it gives them an opportunity to rotate and get some folks who are smaller get them an opportunity to get some exposure and get them boosted. And
Sure.
obviously they can't just add more and more people every single time because they have a limited budget and limited resources. And so I like the idea that they're giving folks in that lower and mid tier of content creators an opportunity to shine, step up. And if that means that some folks, even in myself included, like, it's easy for me to say this right now being in this position, but you know, when Dragonstorm rolls around, I will be applying to be an ambassador for it. If I don't get selected, so be it. I'm going to apply for the next one after that, and we're going to keep going. You know, and that's fine. And it's an honor to be included, and I'm going to appreciate every single time. But as a result, too, any content creators listening to this, I highly recommend, as we are approaching different sets, or if there's a set coming down the pipeline that you're really passionate about, shoot an email to Wizards and let them know, and send them your links, and send them a portfolio with a media kit and that information so that they know and that you're on their radar. Because there will be opportunities, especially with 6 sets, 6 standard sets coming in a year.
Yeah.
So there are going to be a lot of different ambassador classes, and I hope I'm in, a number of them, but I'm glad to be in this one, no question. Even if I don't get selected for any of the others, I'm jazzed to be here. This is cool.
Congrats.
So yeah, thanks.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, so then
Anyway.
you're useless. You can't give us any secret information. Damn it! I thought you were going to be our man on the inside.
I gotta say,
no.
Bright Glass Gearhulk is really, really cool. It really is. This card that has been previewed is really cool. This card's great, you guys. And
is there going to be a cycle, Ham? Tell us. Is there going to be a cycle of Gearhulks that are multicolored in the next in Aether Drift?
Man, Bright Glass Gearhulk is such a cool card, you guys. Anyway.
Yeah.
You're
like that NFL player who is like,
I'm here so I don't get fined.
I'm here so I don't get fined.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm gonna Marshawn Lynch this for sure. No, but the set does. Everything I've seen so far, the set looks awesome. I'm pretty sure I'm allowed to say that. I'm very excited and I think you guys are gonna like it. Cool. And there will be a lot more coming as soon as I'm able to gush about it. I absolutely will. I promise. So like and subscribe.
Cool.
Stick around for that because it's gonna happen. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Cool.
In other news, I was going to
yes.
say, if you want to touch on just what's going on with your, these days, what are you playing? What are you playing Standard? Are you playing other formats?
Oh, yeah.
Have you dipped into Pioneer yet on Arena now that it's kind of fully on there?
I dabbled in Pioneer a little bit, and I didn't quite hit my stride, and so Pioneer hasn't really struck me. One thing that I'm doing a lot, though, I'm playing a ton of Standard.
Yeah, me too.
And I've had an absolute blast revisiting some past archetypes from pre-rotation. The most recent, and sorry if we talked about this last week, I don't remember, but the one that I've been having an absolute gas with is Breach combo. So Breach the Multiverse Reenact.
Oh, the Reenact deck. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what colors? Dimir or?
I'm going Dimir with mine. So Breach the Multiverse is it's a classic. I just adore it. And with Reenact the Crime, you're able to cast it super fast. And so I've been using Collector's Vault and Enigma Jewel. And so one thing that I found, Enigma Jewel is all of a sudden a lot better because one, it gives you a free activation of Collector's Vault each turn.
Right.
And that's the main dream. Like Enigma Jewel on 1, Collector's Vault on 2, you activate Collector's Vault, go to turn 3, activate Collector's Vault again, you can reenact Breach the Multiverse. You can get a turn 3 Breach the Multiverse if you hit the nuts. Amazing. The other thing about it, with Fountain Port and all the creature lands in the format, Enigma Jewel's mana has other uses. And so I have found with Fountain Port, you get some extra, some other lines and some places, some situations where you can use, a Bitter Triumph or some other piece of removal and still activate Fountain Port on your turn because you have the 2 mana from Enigma Jewel. So it really helps this card be, less dead, because that's his biggest problem is it's a Soul Ring, but with very limited applications.
Yeah, the last version I played of that deck, I was trying Enigma Jewel, and I was like, I don't know about this card. So take us through what the deck is doing then. So you're trying to obviously fill your yard, or at least put a breach in the yard, reenact the breach, and then what are you doing?
So we reenact the breach, and this particular deck has... I'm rocking Valgavoth Terror Eater and Atraxa Grand Unifier. So at the end of the day, I am trying to go for the reanimate value. That is absolutely part of the deal. Yes.
So no Conspiracy Unraveler. Because
I do not have Conspiracy Unraveler in this particular build.
Okay.
That is correct.
That was one of the combo cards to let you keep kind of going. So you're just trying to breach once. You're not trying to breach a bunch of times and deck them in one shot.
I'm not necessarily trying to breach, go for the mill, but I do have that line. And the card that is replacing, so the big one back in the day, I say back in the day as if this wasn't like less than a year ago. But Repository Scob was the key piece that rotated, right? Because this one allows you to pull the Breach from the Multiverse back into your hand over and over again, and Conspiracy Unraveler allowed you to free cast it. That was the line. Repository Scob rotated. None of the other cards did, but that one did, and that was absolutely huge. Well, we had this new card from Bloomburrow called Daring Wave Rider, which is an otter surfing on a shell, which is a 4/4 for 6. When it enters, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with mana value 4 or less from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. And so this, assuming that the Breach spin got you what you needed, allows you to recast a Reenact the Crime or a Beseech the Mirror to find a Reenact the Crime to hit Breach the Multiverse again. And so the deck that I have is rocking 2 of these, and that way there is a situation, especially if the opponent is playing, like some kind of domain variant that has Jace the Perfected Mind in it, which has happened to me a couple of times on the ladder. If they're doing that, and I'm able to breach my Daring Wave Rider and their Jace, I'm able to get 2, Breach the Multiverse spins and a Jace -5 is usually enough to mill them out. And in longer, grindier games, being able to hit 2 breaches in a row will oftentimes mill them out. And I have a Jace the Perfected Mind in the sideboard to bring in those matchups so that I'm more likely to be able to pull it off. And so the mill attack is an option, but it's not necessarily plan A. Yeah.
Cool. Looks,
I'm having a lot of fun with
that. Looks, I remember seeing this guy when the Scob rotated. One of the people on my channel, I can't remember who, posted a list with this guy in it, and I thought, value 4 or less. So we're not looping the breaches, but we're looping the thing that casts the breach. So maybe that's enough. But I never ended up actually playing the deck. So you like it. It's been
I do. I'm having a blast with it. The Wave Rider, the Wave Rider loops. I tried building a variant that had 4 Wave Riders, 4 Beseech, 4 Reenacts. Part of the challenge with that though is if you go up against hand hate, like if your opponent hits you with a duress and pulls one of the Breach the Multiverse into your graveyard, it's gone forever, effectively, because the Daring Wave Rider can only recur the Breach, which can only hit a spell that was put there this turn. So breaches or other cards being in the graveyard from earlier, they're just gone. Whereas the Repository Skype could pull back any sorcery from your graveyard. So it worked a lot better and was far more consistent. So the all-in Wave Rider loops, I wasn't able to make that work, and I was pretty frustrated as I tried to force it. And so having the value plan, because honestly, turn 3 attracts is turn 3 attracts, and no matter how you slice it, no matter how you get there, like that's
usually enough. I was gonna say, so what about the resiliency? Like, how are you beating graveyard hate? Because there's plenty of it. Everybody's playing it on the ladder. Ghost Vacuum probably number 1, and then I see some Rest in Pieces. There's some Tranquil Frillbacks running around. How we fighting off the hate?
Rest in Peace is the biggest challenge. Ghost Vacuum, you can kind of play around it because the breaches themselves, it makes the reenact a lot worse. And so I end up having to just play differently when a Ghost Vacuum is down. And I oftentimes will just use the Collector's Vault to ramp into a hard cast breach and accept that I'm not going to be able to reenact it, which is problematic, but you can still get there. So honestly, a big part of it is just playing around it. But Rest in Peace obviously shuts the whole thing down, which is why I have Withering Torment in the sideboard. I have Withering Torment in the sideboard. Yep. And then also, I also use Long River's Pull as a way to, Into the Floodmaw, the other one from Bloomburrow. Into the Floodmaw to get rid of it for a turn so I can fire off the thing. It's not amazing, it's not perfect, but it's often enough to get you there.
Because Dimir, with blue-black, you don't really have any good ways to deal with non-creature permanents, like enchantments and artifacts. Withering Torment was a recent printing that was like every black player any player playing black was just like, oh my god, this finally we got, because Feed the Swarm was so long ago that they had access to something like that. I guess the Invoke Despair was Oh, it's in Foundations, right?
Feed the Swarm's in Foundations, so I could go that route as well.
Wow. Okay, so you have a couple ways to deal with enchantments.
We got a couple options there.
But Ghost Vacuum being an artifact doesn't really. You can't interact with that card.
In that case, if they won game 1, I just really hope to have a turn 1 duress in hand. Which is coming in from the sideboard. Okay. That's about it. That's the best we got.
Interesting.
But
Cool,
yeah,
cool.
so
So what
it,
would you say is
yeah.
the worst match, best match? Like, how is the matchup spread
Honestly, like
against
white
the
decks
top
terrify
decks?
me. Yeah, white decks
Yeah,
are terrifying. Just it's funny though because I love them in
really,
game one. In game one,
because
going
they're
up against the
so
white control
slow.
deck because you're gonna give me
Yeah,
time. I get to set up. Oh man,
yeah,
it's luxurious. I'm the beatdown against against control, which is great. But
yeah.
and having the mill attack as a backup plan is also really really handy. But rest in
Right.
peace. You get to a point where like if your opponent
They
has
find
3
it.
rest in peace in the sideboard and they draw them, the match becomes significantly tougher, and so
Right.
that's a fact.
Well,
Yeah,
so how many Withering Torments are you playing? Like two, probably.
I think
You're
I
not
have
playing more
3
than
torments in the board.
three.
They're all in
Oof.
in the sideboard though, and against white
Cool. Yeah.
I slot all of them in every time. Yeah,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
so what
So
about
that's the key
aggro and
there.
stuff? Like, are you consistently comboing off on turn three? Like, this is people ask me this all the time when I play
Hmm.
Squirming Emergence. Like, yeah, we talk about turn three Atraxa, but let's be honest. How often is that happening? You're not fighting against
Yeah.
the goldfish. So when your
Hmm.
opponent's interacting with you, I mean, the average game, what are we talking here? 10% of the time, 15, 20? Like, this is
Oh,
obviously out of your
I don't
butt,
have.
but you know.
Yeah, I don't have exact numbers on that, but I mean, I have plenty of early interaction in the deck. Bitter Triumph in a deck like this is just aces.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have found that I just have you just have to play the aggro matchups differently, and the fact
Hmm.
that there's the potential to have a 7 power or 9 power lifelinker on the battlefield by turn 3 or 4 gives you hope against those aggro
Yeah.
decks that a lot of these kinds
Yeah,
of
you're a
late game
combo
combo
deck.
decks don't have. And
Yeah.
so I have absolutely dropped the turn 3, Valgavoth against Gruul and just watched them pause for a second and then concede. That's
And
happened.
yeah.
And it's great when it
Right.
does. But yeah, it's happening maybe 10% of the time. Like
Yeah.
it's not
That's what I'm
super
at.
consistent. Yeah. Um, but even so, a well-placed Flood Maw on, the one
Yeah.
powerful prowess attacker can buy you a turn, and sometimes that's all you need. So I have found the deck is capable of the turn 3 pop-off, and it consistently is I would say more than half the time can get to the turn 4 pop-off.
Nice.
If you mulligan appropriately and all that jazz.
Mhm.
So I've also gotten
Cool.
very lucky with my top decks, more often than not with this deck, which I don't know if you're a conspiracy theorist or not. If the tinfoil hat's on, I'm taking it off so that they can get access to the signals because it's beautiful. I'm loving it. Yeah.
Nice. That
So
always helps. Yeah.
I get lucky with this. And the other thing
Running
about this
well.
style of deck, the Breach of the Multiverse combo deck when it first showed up, I was a little bit late to the party, but the moment I started playing it, it just felt right. So
Hmm.
there's something about that play style that is leveraging the way that I think and approach the game. And it's just that kind of approach and that kind of feel just felt natural and easy for me. And I know that
Yeah.
that's not necessarily true for other players. Like I get that other
Yeah.
folks really disliked that deck because it doesn't play like the kind of decks they enjoy. And,
Right.
and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But just as a player, you kind of got to know your strengths, know your weaknesses. And I can say,
Yeah.
like, for whatever reason, the breach decks always felt good to me. They just do. And this one is no
Yeah.
different. Like I don't know, it just feels comfortable and I feel confident in my ability to pilot it in a way to the point where like I don't know if there's a standard event coming up, I might actually get a paper version of this together and be
Wow.
the only
Nice.
guy in the room running it,
Dude,
because
do it. That's
so
awesome.
I
'Cause
think that'd
that's
be
the other
fun.
advantage of
Yeah.
that kind of thing is you nobody's gonna see it coming. And there's
Mhm.
people who are playing graveyard hate, but it's usually like 2 ghost vacuum in the sideboard. Like that's usually what I run into. It's not
Mhm.
people are not playing a ton. Azorius Oculus kind of ticking back up in terms of popularity
Mhm.
is causing people to reevaluate and maybe put more sideboard graveyard hate. But it's
Sure.
funny, I'm listening to you talk about this kind of reanimator deck, and it's just making me think of what I've been playing the last week,
Yeah.
which is something very
What's that?
similar. I've been playing Sultai Squirming Emergence again.
Yes.
One of the people in my channel, Daza, linked a deck that they
Mhm.
were playing, Squirming Emergence. And we've talked about this deck. I've talked about it on the podcast. It's
Yeah.
gone through some changes. The big
Also
one,
amazing. Yep.
it's a great deck. Reanimator, same thing, capable of
I
putting
love it.
Atraxa into play on turn 3 off of turn 2, founding the third path into Picklock Prankster into untap. Mill with the founding, and that's it. You can put Atraxa
Mhm.
right there. But the big pickup here, the big change to the deck was putting Omniscience in the deck that just got reprinted in Foundations. So that Omniscience coming to Foundations gave a lot of people inspiration to make a busted combo deck. This is a very busted card. It's been part of busted combo decks all the way back to Legacy, Show and Tell, and Sneak and Show, and a lot of the things when I was playing Mono Blue, Omnitel, it was sneak this or show and tell this into play and combo off with it. So in the standard Squirming Emergence, you're playing now 4 Omniscience, 4 Atraxa, and 2 Lumra. So it's 10 big things to reanimate. I'm playing the 4 Squirming Emergence. I'm also playing 2 Invasion of Tolvada. Invasion of Tolvada is a 5-mana battle that is black, white, 3 colorless. Comes down, reanimates or puts something from the graveyard into play that's a non-battle permanent. So it can put Omniscience into play. It can put obviously Atraxa or whatever else. So a lot of times, when the Sultai decks were first kind of being engineered and stuff, when right after Lost Caverns of Ixalan came out, or I think that was, Squirming Emergence got printed, people were using Cruelty of Gix in this spot. And you were kind of just having a couple of Cruelty of Gix in your deck. Cruelty or Invasion, they accomplish the same thing. A 5-mana reanimation card that is a permanent, which can be brought back with Squirming Emergence, allows you to sometimes reanimate Atraxa when you only have 5 permanents in your graveyard and not 7. It allows you to put an Omniscience into play, because Omniscience costs 10. I mean, that's a tall order, even for a Squirming Emergence deck. You're never really able to do that on turn 3, or even 4 is a big ask. So, having milling an Invasion and an Omniscience, bam, you just get to 5 permanents, which is very trivially easy to do. And you just immediately put Omniscience into play. So, what happens? Why is this good? You put Omniscience into play. I mean, it's better to put Atraxa into play and refill your hand. Normally, that's what you're going for, because the deck is spending a lot of its resources trying to accomplish this task of putting this huge thing into play. Atraxa is always the best target, because you end up putting a huge thing into play with 2 cards in your hand. You need to refill. Valgamoth, I was testing, and it's good too, because it kind of draws you cards in a way as your opponent's stuff goes to the graveyard. But it's not like Atraxa, where you can just immediately refill, and if they kill Atraxa, you just put it back on the battlefield. Sorry, let me just close the door here. People in my house are very
worries.
loud. So the idea now is you put Omniscience into play, and you try and either reanimate or cast one of your 2 Invasion of Arcavios. So this is one of the other combo cards. So Omniscience comes into play off the white-black Invasion of Tolvada sometimes, or sometimes you just cheat it in with Omniscience. But Invasion of Arcavios is the blue 5-mana invasion. It's 2 blue, 3 colorless. It ETBs and says you can go look through your library, graveyard, or sideboard for any instant or sorcery. And the big word on that card is, well, it doesn't say sideboard, but it says from outside the game. That's the big mode. So now this Squirming Emergence deck has a way to go to its sideboard. So suddenly your sideboard becomes a toolbox. You're playing a Beseech the Mirror in the sideboard. So the first thing you do when you have Omniscience in play and everything is free, you cast the Invasion of Arcavios, you go to the sideboard, you get Beseech, you cast Beseech for free, it gets your second Invasion of Arcavios, you have 2 in the deck. The second Invasion of Arcavios goes to the sideboard and gets This Town Ain't Big Enough. And then when you This Town Ain't Big Enough, you bounce both of your Invasions of Arcavios, this town goes to the graveyard. Now the first Invasion of Arcavios goes to the sideboard and gets your Breach the Multiverse, the same one you're using. That's the fast way to do it. There's a few cards you could go for here and loop, but basically I just get Breach. And then the second Invasion of Arcavios that you bounce back to hand gets the This Town Ain't Big Enough again. And there's your loop. So you start going, This Town Ain't Big Enough, bounce my Invasions, Invasion back the Breach, because remember, Invasion is pulling these spells from your graveyard, so you're just casting Breach again, and then the second Invasion is bringing back This Town Ain't Big Enough to bounce both of the Invasions of Arcavios. To do it again, first Invasion gets Breach, etc., and you mill them. So this deck is, like a lot of the Squirming Emergence games would end with, turn 3 Atraxa, and it's a red deck, and they just can't beat that, sure. But a lot of decks can beat that, especially these days. You've got all the Esper decks and everything, and Dimir mid-range. They play a lot of bounce. They play This Town Ain't Big Enough. They play removal. They can just kill your Atraxa and keep going, and then they cast, Enduring Curiosity and start drawing cards, and now they're at the same card total as you, and you're just like, oh my god, I did the thing, but I'm not winning this game. This loop lets you end the game immediately. Like, there's no more turns. You deck them, and that's it. You loop and deck them, and that's it. So not just turn 3 Atraxa. It's like sometimes you're going turn 3 Omniscience, loop, and then just kill them, and that's it. They don't get another turn. It's very powerful. So I've been very impressed. I'm trying to tweak it, trying to find the right numbers, because it's hard to play that many big things to reanimate. but they're all pretty important. Like 2 Lumra is a weird one, but Lumra is so important in that deck for beating Graveyard Hate. When your opponents, as long as you can cheat in a Lumra early, it ramps you to so much mana that it doesn't matter if your opponent's Rest in Peace or whatever, Tranquil Frill back your graveyard away. Lumber just lets you hardcast your Atraxas, I've hardcast Omniscience easily after, resolving Lumra. So yeah, Lumra is a big, important part of the deck as a way to just provide the mana to ignore Graveyard Hate and stuff like that. Ghost Vacuum and things like that won't matter. I resolve a Lumra, they're eating with Ghost Vacuum, and then they suddenly go, oh crap, I can't eat all these lands. Boom, I get all these lands into play, and now I'm hard casting stuff. The one of Jace, you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Jace is an excellent win con in these decks. Bringing back Jace just accelerates things, gives you a great angle. Like the milling angle is a very powerful way to beat decks because there's like mono control, like you mentioned. They gain a lot of life. And trying to kill them with Atraxa hits is almost impossible. Like, you can get a couple hits in, but then
it's gonna take forever.
It's not enough.
Yeah.
They kill it, and So just loop or milling them with Jace or just looping and they don't get another turn. It's just been fantastic. So I feel like the Squirming deck just suddenly got better. It got more powerful. It picked up essentially an infinite combo out of the sideboard that is very powerful. So the other things you're playing in the sideboard, because you're going to the sideboard for this combo, the only slots you need to take up are 1, this town ain't big enough. 1, Beseech the Mirror. Those are your 2 and Breach the Multiverse. Those are your 3 combo cards that you get to just end the game. But outside that, you've got and I can't think of the name, but it's the Green Season, which is in there. Any instant or sorcery you can basically play. So the Green Season you go get, and you can destroy enchantments. Blowing up all the enchantments is very powerful against Domain or the mono white deck. You got these Silver Bullets. You just go get what was the other one? I had these have been switching all week for me. I've been changing a bunch of different ones, but Season's been very good. Even just a 1 of Duress I've got in there, a 1 of Whale of the Forgotten. Sometimes I'll side it out and then I'll go, I can just go get my Whale and then play Jace, -4, bounce Jace, play Jace, -5, and I win. Like Whale, even your sideboard cards that you're sideboarding out are still valid targets to go get and win
that's
with.
Wild.
So the deck's been very sweet, and there's a lot of play to it now because it opened up. Invasion of Arcavius kind of opens up this new dimension of the deck to be able to do these kind of loops and go to the sideboard and pick out Silver Bullets and stuff. So it's been not just fun to play, but like very, very powerful. You've got 4 Tranquil Frill back in the board just to beat the Graveyard Hate. The next question is the same thing I asked you. What do you do against Graveyard Hate as the Graveyard deck? At least when you're playing green, you've got some options. So Tranquil Frillback blows up Rip, it blows up Ghost Vacuum. It's great against all the Graveyard Hate that people are playing right now. I never see any Kutsil's Flanker. If people were playing cards like that, this would be a bigger problem, but almost everybody's just on Ghost Vacuum, and you just wait till you have a Frillback, you kill their Vacuum, and then you just go off. Like it's actually pretty tough for them to stop you. They need multiple graveyard pieces, or you need to stumble badly and not be able to play your spells or something for them to get you. So it's a super powerful deck. I just put a YouTube video of it online, but I'm going to keep working on it this week. And I've been liking it. So yeah, going back to old school, Squirming Emergence, and it feels good. It feels super powerful against the metagame right now. The Esper Fairies decks and the Dimir decks have no chance because they all moved away from their counter magic. None of them are playing Spell Stutter. None of them are playing actual counter magic anymore. They're all playing 2-mana creatures that bounce enchantments and stuff. So you just get to do your thing, and they can't. Like game 1, I'm like 90% against everything except like really hard aggro. Gruul aggro can be still tough. Like if they win the die roll, they come out swinging. You stumble a little bit, you're dead. But yeah, you still have those draws where even if they are on the play, come out swinging, you just turn 3 attracts to them, and that's still GG. Post sideboard, they can Paw Patch Patrol or try and interact with your attracts, so threaten effects. But yeah, the decks felt great. So I love that we're both on Reanimator right now. I think if you are listening and you want to play Standard and you don't want to play a established meta deck that everybody else is playing, I would seriously look at the Reanimation decks in the format. I mean, even just good old Azorius Oculus looks pretty well positioned right now. It's got a really good game against all these decks playing Hopeless Nightmare basically, and
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good time to be. I think one of these kind of combo decks. It feels really sweet.
Hmm.
So the one downside I will say to Squirming Emergence for you arena players, or probably even in real life, is it's not cheap. It's a lot of wild cards. I know Ham's Demir deck is probably a lot easier on the old
Yeah,
arena
it's not
wallet, or I don't know. Yeah.
terrible. It's one of those things where if you're a reanimation enthusiast already, or already have the Demir lands and stuff, it's not terrible. Um,
Hmm.
but I don't know. Yeah, at
Well,
the end of the day, these combo decks, part of the challenge with them for arena players specifically is that a lot of these kind of cards won't transfer. Like Squirming Emergence
yeah.
is a great example. And like, yeah, Omniscience is one of those cards that's been printed now a couple of times, so you may already have some in your collection, but if you don't, is it worth the mythic? It's like, well,
Yeah.
in this deck,
It's
absolutely, but where else are you gonna
you have
put
to.
it? Like,
But yeah. So and it's a
yeah.
lot of rares. Like you're reanimating these
Hmm.
big flashy rares. There's 10 things at the top end at rare and mythic that you have to craft, but just the
Yeah.
mana base being 3 colors, it's a lot of rare lands. Like so, that's the only
Yeah.
drawback. But hey, if rare wildcards are no issue, then I strongly recommend jamming Squirming. If you want to see my list, you can go to my YouTube channel,
Heck yeah.
DamienF16_magic, or even just on Untapped. I'm sure you can find me at DamienF16. But yeah, the
Love it.
latest list is good. We're gonna keep working on it. So sweet. Yeah, we're both in the same place,
Dude, I
standard
dig it.
wise.
Yeah. No, Squirming Emergence
Yeah.
is a blast. I do love that deck too. And Invasion of Arcavios is actually something that I've dabbled with a little bit. And the Invasion of Arcavios this town ain't big enough. I had
Yeah.
one deck that was capable of
Gross.
getting Omniscience down, and I did that at one point. And it feels like you're cheating, man, because there's like the world's at
Yeah.
the world's at your fingertips.
Well,
Yeah. And the key
I
there.
found. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, the key with any Omniscience deck, I think a lot of people think, oh, I'll just slam Omniscience and then how could I lose? It's like, well, if you don't have a plan, you can still lose very easily,
Yeah.
And
If you have
so
no gas in hand and you can't
you
cast
got
any more free spells,
mhm,
what's good?
you got
Omniscience not doing
yeah,
anything. Yeah.
you got to have some plan to at the very least refill your hand, and that's
Right.
why like I've definitely done Omniscience with like just 4 Atraxas and various ways to reanimate Atraxa in the deck, and that's usually enough to get you enough value to close the door. But having a
Yeah.
combo kill that is very consistent and just eliminates the ability for your opponent to take a single game action, is
Yeah.
that's where
It's
that's
busted.
perfect. Yeah,
And
no,
it's
that's
not
exactly where you
that
want to be.
it's not that much clicking.
Well,
Like, it's a loop, and whenever I hear infinite loop on arena, I'm just like, oh god. Like,
hmm
I played Lotus Field and Pioneer and stuff. It's a nightmare.
right.
Or even the Teamer Fireballs deck pre-rotation was just
hmm
so much clicking with those new Capenna lands. But
Yep.
this is not that bad. It's pretty straightforward. It's a loop, and it takes some finagling, but once you kind of get the hang of it, it goes quick, so that's good. But
Right.
um what was I gonna say though? The rares, mythics. I don't remember. Anyway,
Yeah,
it's a good
I
deck.
fear I
Check it
fear
out.
neither of these decks are going to be budget, but yeah,
No,
it
no.
just is what it is. Yeah, although actually, come to think of it, there is an archetype now that I haven't touched in a couple of weeks. At this point, it might be a few months. Insidious Roots is one that I haven't done in
Oh
a
yeah.
while, and I think it might be time to dust that off and
Hmm.
see if that has any play these days. Because graveyards are wide open, and actually, Ghost Vacuum could even power up Insidious Roots in a fun way because it cares about cards leaving the graveyard. And so, yeah, your opponent
Oh
having some
yeah.
control over that is a little bit of a bummer, but if they activate their Ghost Vacuum and strip one of your
You're
creatures, it
doing
triggers
the
Roots.
thing.
And so you're not getting
Yeah.
nothing out of it. So I don't know. I might tinker with that. That might be interestingly positioned. And there could easily be budget versions of that as well. Which, I
Right.
mean, Overlord of the Baelmerk is just a bomb that for
Well,
sure belongs in there, but I'm sure we could
yeah.
make a
The
version
Roots deck
without
is
it and it'll
sweet.
be fine. Yeah.
I'd like to see that deck put up some numbers. Actually, the reason I started experimenting, I remembered what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
The deck that actually got me to put Omnitel and think more about Omnitel, about Omniscience, was this
Yeah.
blue-white deck. So on the weekend, last weekend, because we're recording this on a Sunday, I believe it was last weekend or early last week, there was an RCQ in Spain, 50-something players, 56, 58 players, and the player who won was playing blue-white Omniscience combo. And it was using, all your self-mill cards, Picklock Prankster, Philology Archaeologist, Moment of Truth, Moment
Mm-hmm.
of something,
Yeah.
Blue One, yeah, Moment of Truth, all this kind of stuff, to find Abuelo's Awakening, and to
Yes.
dump Charta Course would make you discard. There was a couple looters. So you basically put Omniscience in the yard, either off Charta Course or by milling it, and then you cast Abuelo's Awakening, which makes which makes Omniscience come out of your graveyard and enter play as a 1/1 flying spirit creature. And then you Invasion of Arcavios, go to the sideboard and get the Season of Weaving, I believe. Yeah, so Abuelo's Awakening was
Oh,
the
yeah.
reanimation card, and then you get Season of Weaving. You cast Season of Weaving, and you choose the second two modes. So Season of Weaving is 4 colorless blue sorcery. Choose 5 paw prints worth of modes. The first one draws a card, but you never do that. You always choose method or mode number 2, which is choose an artifact or creature you control, make a copy that's a token, and then the last mode, bounce all the non-land, non-token permanents to their owner's hands. So you're copying your Omniscience, which is a creature. It becomes a token copy of Omniscience that's not a creature. Then everything that's not a token gets bounced, including your Invasion of Arcavios that you used to go find the Season. So now you can play Season, or you can play Invasion again, get the Season out of the graveyard, keep looping, and every time you loop, you're making like 1/1 creatures. You need 2 Invasions of Arcavios to kind of do it and make 1/1s and stuff. But you're going to the sideboard, you're getting a bounce spell to manifest and make a manifest 2/2, and then you're copying that. There's a bunch of ways to win. I played it, it felt pretty good, but I was like, oh, it's so inconsistent, and it's just a lot harder to pull off. Like making the Omniscience into a 1/1 creature means there's this window where, you know, you get the Omniscience token, it enters play. Okay, I can cast the free spell, but as soon as I put anything on the stack, my opponent immediately is going to kill that Omniscience 1/1, right? And
Right.
anything kills it, from cut down to go for the throw to Lightning, Helix, Burst Lightning in the red decks. Like every deck has removal. So you have to just like, you had to bend over backwards to like not only combo off, but make sure you have a counter spell. Confounding Riddle is your 4 of counter spell in the deck. 2 colorless, 1 blue instant that says counter spell unless they pay 4 colorless, or look at the top 4, put 1 in your hand, the rest in your graveyard. So it's kind of, you know, does double duty there. But you needed 1 in your hand to protect this stupid 1/1. Because remember, when the Omniscience is in play, all your spells are free. You don't need to have mana untapped. You just counter their removal. But it was just too much to like do. It was too much juggling, and it was a little inconsistent. So that gave me inspiration, though, when I saw that Omniscience kind of loop with This Town Ain't Big Enough and Invasion of Arcavios. I thought that there's something there. And then, you know, this person in my channel said, well, what about this Sultai list that's doing the same thing? Invasion of Arcavios, Omniscience, and instead of Season of Weaving in the board, we're just going to go get This Town Ain't Big Enough and loop it that way because, and Squirming Emergence bringing these battles back into play is really good. So anyway, the blue-white version was cool. Somebody actually won an RCQ with 50-something players, which is really crazy. I loved seeing that. That's what caught my attention. But the blue-white version is so inconsistent. I don't know, you know, maybe they had some great matches or it just ran well or whatever, but I think the better version is the Sultai version. It's so much more consistent and can actually interact and stuff. So anyway,
I'm here for
that's
it.
my recap for Standard there, at least what I've been up to.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to get to today? Any other?
You know, I don't think so. I think, I think
Nice.
we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, before I know you're going to ask me, I'm going to ask you first. Oh, do we have a question of the week before we close it up?
You know, I don't have one at the top of my mind. Nothing too fancy. So I don't know. One that comes to my mind, because I actually have an answer for it, and I rarely do, is you know, seen any good movies lately?
Seen any good movies? Oh, yeah, I have, actually.
Oh, what you got?
I saw Nosferatu in the theater.
Ooh, how was
Eggers, movie director. He's really good. I like a lot of his movies. The Lighthouse I thought was really cool, and The Northman was pretty good too. The Witch was awesome. It was good. I thought it was good. It's you know, I didn't realize it's almost a shot for, or not shot for shot, but like it's an exact remake of the original Nosferatu. It's not like some reimagining or anything. It's like the OG. And I thought it was pretty good. It was creepy. It was well acted, well written, and but kind of a little art house, like a little artsy. I like that. I like those kind of movies. If it's too much, I'm not a big fan. But like, I don't know if you've seen like The Lighthouse and or The Witch.
I haven't, but I'd be happy to put those on the list. Yeah.
They're not for everybody, because again, they're like weirdly like bleak and kind of like The Lighthouse was. But I don't want to tell you anyway. You watch it and see if you like it. But yeah.
What you just did right there sold me on it completely, because my favorite movies, some of my favorite movies out there, are the ones where people say it's great, you'll love it. I can't tell you anything about it. You have to just go in and experience it. And those are some of my absolute favorites. So
how about you? What have you seen recently that's really good?
So I randomly actually signed up for a streaming service just honestly because I wanted to catch a really a football game that was going to be really the Vikings Lions last. We got kind of an NFC championship game in the regular season just by virtue of how it came together, or NFC North. Anyway, I'm a Vikings fan who lives in Lion Country, so I have a vested interest in this game, and so as a result, I actually signed up for Peacock, which normally I don't have that many streaming services. But I was like, well, I need to see this game. I can't miss this game, and so I was like, sure, here's $8, and I guess I'm gonna have this service for a month. What other value can I get off it? And they had a bunch of the original Alien movies on it, which I hadn't seen before. Like I hadn't actually sat down and watched like the first Alien movie.
Really? Ever? You've never seen it?
I never had.
Oh,
I've seen so many things that reference it, and I've seen so many clips from it. Like I knew, and like I've known stories about it, but I hadn't actually just sat down and watched the movie. So I finally did. I finally watched the original Alien and Aliens, both absolutely excellent. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it.
So wait, you hadn't seen Aliens either? The second one?
I hadn't. And that one I did also sit down and watch recently.
Yeah.
And let me tell you what, man, the voice lines for the Terran troops in StarCraft make a lot more sense now. All of those in the pipe 5x5. Like that was something that I definitely remember the dropship saying in StarCraft from when I was a kid.
And it's funny. I mean, Ridley Scott did first Alien, right? And it was great because it was a suspense like horror movie, and the second one
a slow burn. Oh my goodness,
completely and the second one was like an action movie. Was it? Who did the second one? Was it Ridley Scott again? I can't remember. I think it might have been a different director, but anyway, and it's just a completely different movie, but still awesome, right? And those movies are great. Oh, good for you. Yeah, classic.
Excellent. I know. There's definitely some required reading that I'm finally getting caught up on. Yeah, because my goodness. Yeah. Absolutely enjoyed it. And then I watched Alien vs. Predator, which was also on there, and it was fine.
Yep. It was okay. I mean,
it was all right.
Yeah, the newer Alien movies, like the latest one is pretty good. Romulus, I think it's called. Alien Romulus. That was actually not bad. I thought it was pretty good.
Well, and ultimately, that was the motivation. Is this franchise This franchise is continuing, and it's still culturally relevant, and people keep telling me it's great, and I keep hearing good things, and I want to get. I'm curious, I want to watch Prometheus and Romulus, and I get an idea what's going on. But I feel like I need to have at least a base understanding of where this came from, so I can understand some of the reference points, and because I have complete faith that there are callbacks and hints and things where if I'm not familiar with the original, if I'm not familiar with where we came from, I'm not going to get it, and I'm not going to appreciate it. So. So that's what I'm doing, and it's been fun. I'm binging the Aliens franchise, and thoroughly enjoying it. Anyone out there who hasn't seen this movie, I highly recommend. Yeah,
yeah, they're great. Yeah. Anyway, we don't talk about Alien 3, but the other ones are okay.
Fortunately, Peacock doesn't have Alien 3, and I'm not going to stress it.
I wonder why.
Too much.
It's not a great one. Prometheus and the other one, Andromeda, or I can't remember. There was two of them. They were okay too. They were not great, but the new one, the Romulus, is quite good. I thought that one was solid. So
excellent. Cool. Yeah.
And so what else is coming up on the horizon for you? Anything else?
Well, I'm going to be in MagicCon Chicago.
Nice.
Also the sheer amount of shorts that I'm going to be putting out around Innistrad Remastered and Aether Drift in the near future are going to be absolutly. It's going to be nonstop.
So if you want info.
If you want to see Piggy Banks, asking me to sell him this card, that is going to be a thing on all the social medias. That's going to be going to be happening a lot in the coming weeks. So I'm having a lot of fun with that. So yeah, and
nice.
Life is good. How about you, man? Anything coming up that you want people to know about?
Tomorrow, the 13th, I'm going to be on the front page of Twitch from 12 p.m. Pacific time to 8 p.m. So I don't know when they give me this range. I don't know if they're saying at some point in those 8 hours you're going to be on Twitch for some length of time, or if they're saying I'm going to be on the front page for 8 hours. I don't think that's what they're saying, but I'm going to let viewers tell me what's up. So they don't clarify. They just say from this time to this time you're going to be on the front page, and I'm like, are they giving me a range within which my 5 minutes is there, or I don't know how it works.
It's funny. When I did it, I was definitely on for 10 hours that day. I went for it.
I'm gonna go. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah,
right.
I would recommend going hard on it, because I do think I believe what they do is you will be they have a list of people who are on the front page. And if you are, if of all the people who are going to be live during that time, they kind of rotate between them. But if you go to the front page at any point, So like tomorrow or the day this is
Yeah.
released, I'll try to get this out tonight so that people will can get a good
Okay.
good
Thanks.
advance heads up, because that's awesome.
Yeah.
But
See how it goes. But they rotate around during that 8 hours.
they rotate,
people.
and there's
That
a little
makes
carousel
sense.
on the front page. When you first log in, it'll show
seen
somebody,
it.
and then you can
Yeah.
filter. And so
So
I
I'm
know
in
when
there somewhere.
yeah, like I was on the front page once at this point a few months back, and when I did it, it was kind of jarring because like within the first like 2 minutes of me going live, I had like 800 people, or 800
Wow,
viewers,
crazy.
and it was one of those where I
Yeah.
was like, okay, supposedly I'm on the front page, like let's check the viewers. Holy cow! Yeah, so it works. You
Nice,
will
cool.
be promoted.
Yeah, that's what's
but
happening tomorrow.
one thing I noticed is a couple hours in, my viewership halved, like very visibly dropped, literally in half. Clearly, some other people who were also on the front page at that same time logged in, and as a result, viewership all of a sudden started getting split. It's like, hey,
Okay.
rock on, but I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Where if you do step off at any point,
I'm gonna have a carousel of games. I think I don't just want to play Magic the whole time. I'm gonna be playing Magic. I'm gonna play some Helldivers 2 and some other games I've installed. I will see, but
heck yeah,
because I want to show
love it.
people, I'm not just a one game channel. I do like to play other stuff, and if people do pop in from the front page who aren't, there's going to be a lot of people maybe taking a look who aren't Magic fans, and Magic again is not the greatest game to stream for people who don't play it. Like nobody can follow Magic unless you're entrenched in it. So like other games are very easy to follow even if you've never seen them before.
Oh yeah.
So I do want to play a few different things. So we'll see how it goes. But please do join me if you are part of the Magic community. That anybody out there listening, 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. Pacific time, Monday the 13th. I'll be on the front page. Come say hi.
Dude, that rules. Congrats. Yeah. Very cool.
See how it goes.
You got this.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've done this so many hours now. I'm okay. I'm just gonna be my normal self. I'm not gonna be nervous.
Do what you do, and people will find you who wouldn't find you otherwise. So yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah. So thank you. Thanks for joining me, man, and thank you, dear listener, for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And like, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, do all the things. We also all of our links are in the description. So if you're interested in checking out any of those streams and any other content that we're putting out, please go click the links and go hit the things and follow and subscribe on all the other do the thing. It's the internet. You know what's up. Anyway, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you.
All right.
We'll catch you on the next one. Later.
See ya.